People's Forum. It is both an honor and a privilege to guide you through tonight's Town Hall Forum, which is under the theme, People, Time, Come.
No.
Before we proceed, I'd like to extend a heartfelt gratitude to the organizers. I want to acknowledge our heroes who worked beyond the call of duty to execute this event. So our host, Mayor Donovan Mitchell, Mr. Hopton McCarthy, Miss Verna Manning, Miss Christine Bell, Dexroy Martin, Miss Shamil Brown, the social media warriors, media personnel, and of course, the General himself, Dr. Dayton Campbell, for his steady hands. I see some familiar faces in the audience tonight. I see our mayor from Kingston, Councillor Swaby, Mayor of Kingston, is here with us tonight. Nice to have you. I see our former Mayor of Manchester, Miss Brenda Ramsey, who is in our audience tonight. I see Mr. Wentworth Skeffrey in the audience, and Mrs. Carlene Thompson also in the audience. Mrs. Carlene Thompson, my friend and colleague and constituency secretary for Central Manchester. I see Mr. and Mrs. Tony Freckleton in the audience as well, and our councillors for Manchester. Please stand and be recognized. Give them a round of applause. Hardworking, Central Manchester, South Manchester, Northwest Manchester, and Central Manchester. And Northeast Manchester. I said Central twice because maybe, is it 4 out of 4 now? I'm just checking. Now, the People's National Party is firmly committed to transforming Jamaica into the ideal place to live, work, do business, invest, raise families, and retire. Indeed, we're in Manchester. In pursuit of this overarching goal, we recognize the growing need to both share more information with the public and actively seek their feedback on the vision, plans, programs, and projects being developed for their benefit. To address this gap, it is essential to establish and promote participatory forums such as this one that foster meaningful interaction between citizens and policymakers. The next People's National Party government intends to be inclusive in our approach to governance and commits to ensuring the ensuing terms in government is a partnership with the Jamaican people as we travel the path to development together. This forum is the beginning of this commitment. Now, our esteemed presenters for tonight, we're getting into the big leagues. The Constitution boss, the People's Defender, Mr. Mark Jefferson Golding, Member of Parliament, President of the People's National Party, and Leader of the Opposition of Jamaica. Mr. Michael Phillips, Member of Parliament for Northwestern Manchester and Shadow Minister of Transport and Mining. Mr. Julian Robinson, my friend, the money man, I'm not setting you up. Member of Parliament, Shadow Minister of Finance and the Public Service. And because there's one general in town, Dr. Dayton Campbell, General Secretary, Shadow Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries and Rural Development. Without further ado, we pause to recognize the Lord's presence with us this evening, and we invite Reverend Dr. Paul Blake Jr., who is the Senior Pastor of Grace Community Fellowship in Harmons, who will lead us in prayer.
Good evening, everyone. Let us pray. Sovereign and everlasting God, creator of the heavens and the earth, the God who plants nations like seed and watches over them like a gardener, tends to his field. We gather tonight beneath the convoy of your presence, acknowledging you as the source of wisdom, justice, and the hope of the people. Lord, as we gather tonight, we thank you for Jamaica, our beloved land, lush in beauty, rich in heritage, and resilience in spirit. Thank you for the gifts of our hills and our plains, and our rivers and bauxite, our farmers and workers, our dreamers and planters. We declare that this land is yours, and we are stewards of it to flourish. Tonight, O God, as the People's National Party gathers to cast vision, to speak of plans for agriculture and rural development, of transportation, mining, finance, and the holistic renewal of this nation, we invoke your presence. May this forum not be driven by ambition, but by your service. May words spoken not be of self-promotion, but of people-centered transformation. Let every utterance be filtered through the lens of justice, compassion, and truth. And so, Lord, even we ask for your anointing upon the leadership of this party, especially upon the party leader, the leader of opposition. As we speak, Lord, not just with eloquence, but with conviction rooted in moral courage. May the vision cast, O God, not merely aim for power, but for the empowerment of the least, the lifting up of the poor, and the restoring of what has been broken. Grant, O Lord, that tonight's gathering will not only inform minds, but ignite hope. May it stir consciences, mobilize communities, and signal a new day for our people. For unless you build the house, those who build in vain. And unless you guide the journey, the destination will be lost. Lord, you have raised up from amongst us leaders who walk humbly, love mercy, and do justice. And may the plans shared tonight be more than policy. May they be a covenant with the people, a promise of equality, sustainability, and peace. Bless every speaker, everyone in attendance, every listener, and every soul that hunger for change. And let your righteous rule down like waters, and your justice like a mighty stream over the length and breadth of Jamaica. It is in your name we pray and ask. Amen.
Thank you, Dr. Reverend Blake, for blessing us with prayer. It is also fitting that we hand over to another member of the clergy, our host, to do the official welcome for this evening, Bishop, His Worship, Councillor Donovan Mitchell, Mayor of Mandeville, Councillor of Royal Flat Division, and Member of Parliament in waiting for Central Manchester.
I almost asked who she's talking about. Right, she's here, right? Yes. I begin by extending a warm and special welcome to our party president, Mark Golding, Jamaica's next Prime Minister. Right. That is right. Dr. David Campbell, spokesman on agriculture and rural development, Julian Robinson, spokesman on finance and the public service, and Michael Phillips, spokesman on transportation and mining, who are our speakers tonight. But it will be remiss of me not to look in the crowd and I see Peter Bunting, the candidate for South Manchester.
Next member of parliament.
I'm looking. Valwint, where are you? Oh, you just come in. Is a candidate for Northeast Manchester. And you know, MP Phillips is still the candidate for Northwest Manchester. And they say you must not blow your old trumpet, but when the next elections are called, you know who will be at Central Manchester. I think I see Deputy General Secretary Martin, Extra Martin, Deputy General Secretary Winston Skeffrey. Distinguished guests, business leaders, professionals, volunteers, workers, friends from Manchester and across Jamaica. Tonight is about shaping the future. Because my friends, time comes for fresh leadership. Time comes for bold, honest representation. Time comes to claim our rightful place of pride and progress in this society. In the words of the great Michael Mandeville, he says, there is no power greater than a people determined to rise. And tonight we gather with that determination, ready to build, ready to listen, ready to win. We are here not only to speak, but to hear your ideas, your concern, your vision. Together we will craft a path fueled by your voices, shaped by your dreams, and strengthened by your spirit. So as we talk to you, as you talk back to us, with purpose, with passion, and leave here more edified with a greater understanding of what a PNP government will do for Jamaica. Time come, and as PJ Patterson would say, the will of the people is the ultimate source of strength and authority. Relax, listen, give your feedback, and get answers to your questions. I welcome you all to this our town hall meeting. God bless you.
Thank you, Mayor. Donovan, I want on one hand, no, Mayor, too quick, I want you on one hand to tell the audience how many children you have. Okay, let's move on. Donovan, thank you for your warmth. We'll now take greetings from South Manchester, which will be offered by Senator Peter Murcott Bunting, Shadow Minister of Citizen Security and Productivity, and MP candidate for Manchester Southern, my former boss. The real boss, right?
Next MP.
Thank you, Trish. Distinguished panelists, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, comrades and friends. It's my pleasure to bring greetings here this evening. We meet at a time in history when the objective deterioration in conditions in Manchester and Jamaica are evident. Now, some of you may not realize this, those of you who are better off, because if you listen just to the propaganda of the government, you would think everything is going well. Unfortunately, Unfortunately, propaganda, misinformation, and lies can't go to the supermarket, can't go to the market, can't go to the grocery store. So the people of Jamaica, or the majority of the people of Jamaica, know that their objective conditions have deteriorated. Poor health care. Anyone who goes to Mandeville Regional can attest to that. poor educational outcomes, bad roads, and if anyone wants a tour, I can take them to some concentrated areas in South Manchester. Low investment. Net foreign direct investment in Jamaica today is less than a third of what it was when we left office in 2016. Declining productivity per worker. Since 2007, the productivity per worker for each worker in Jamaica has declined by about 21%, which is why we're stuck in the low skill, low wage gap that Julian Robinson often speaks about. This administration, this JLP administration, has been in power for 14 of the last 18 years. And it's interesting that they only want to talk about the 18 years that started in 1989. They don't really want to talk about the last 18 years for which they've been in office for 14. So we find them celebrating today the fact that the poverty rate was 8.2%. What people may forget is that in 2007, when they took office, the poverty rate was 9-point-something%. What happened when they took office in 2007? It rocketed to over 20%. And it didn't start declining till the PNP came back into office 2012 to 2016, and we gave them back on a declining trajectory. Now, they're trumpeting, or I should say they're ringing out the fact that they now have 8-point-something versus 9-point-something% poverty 18 years ago. But at that pace, ladies and gentlemen, it would take us over a century to eliminate poverty in Jamaica. They want to campaign on their success in crime. But what do the statistics show? More Jamaicans have been murdered in Andrew Holness's 2 terms than in any other 2 terms in the history of Jamaica. How can they call that a success? And perhaps for those who may be watching from overseas, the most embarrassing thing is that we now have the most corrupt regime in the history of Jamaica. The Prime Minister's integrity returns cannot be certified year after year. We have a Prime Minister under investigation for illicit enrichment, who in response takes the Integrity Commission to court to strike down the very laws that his own government passed, who starves the Financial Investigation Division of resources because a referral to investigate him was made to the FID. This is a regime that goes so low as to thief fertilizer from the peasant farmers. They thief Nutribun from school picnic. They will even steal money from the Bustamante Hospital with this outrageous overcharging by their cronies for a medical drill that is stealing money from sick children. How much lower can we go? And in fact, when Dr. Dawes, our spokesman on health, did his investigation, it emerges that there is a hidden owner of this company that's overcharging taxpayers for this medical drill. The company is actually controlled by someone referred to as A, the letter A. No, don't say Andrew. But until we learn who is the beneficial of that beneficial owner, of that company, people will speculate. But ladies and gentlemen, this evening will give you hope. The People's National Party has a proven track record of performance. In this constituency of Central Manchester, when Kirkvine closed, we sought investors to replace Kirkvine, to get life after bauxite, and we brought Sutherland Global to Ward Avenue and to Northwest Manchester to employ thousands of young people. We built more schools. When I was MP in 2 terms, I built more schools in this one constituency than the JP has built in the entire Jamaica in the last 2 terms. So tonight you will hear from a team of proven performers, led by a man with clean hands and a pure heart. Someone I've known since he was in first form. He's been my friend, my business partner for 3 decades, and parliamentary colleague for nearly 2 decades. A man destined to be amongst the finest prime ministers this country has ever seen. I invite you this evening to listen carefully to our distinguished panel of presenters and to make notes of your questions, because you will hear of a powerful policy platform that's going to make Jamaica, indeed, Tricia, as you said, finally the place to live, work, raise family, and do business. Ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to listen to the policy platform of the team that will make Jamaica better. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Bunting, for offering greetings from our sister constituency, South Manchester. Our presentations. It is now time, ladies and gentlemen, to hear from the leadership of the People's National Party. Tonight, our presentations will allow for proper information dissemination by our legislative and policy power brokers about plans and projects that are geared towards achieving the developmental objectives in line with the current vision to make Jamaica the place to live, work, invest, raise families, and retire. We will begin, with Prime Minister in Waiting. I said that. The People's Defender, Mr. Mark Jefferson Golding, President of the People's National Party and leader of the opposition in Jamaica.
Thank you very much, Trish. Colleagues on the platform, candidates, former members of parliament, and MPs in waiting, mayors, Kingston, Manchester, officers of the party, ladies and gentlemen, comrades and friends. It's wonderful to be here in Manchester this evening. And this is the second in our series of town halls, as we call them, which are opportunities really for the People's National Party to demonstrate in practice what we mean by participatory democracy and consultation. So we have created these opportunities where citizens like yourselves can come and hear what some of our plans are, and we will get the opportunity to listen to you, your questions and thoughts afterwards, which are very valuable to us and will help us to further develop and refine our own ideas. And this is really how democracy is enriched democracy is not just about elections every 5 years, but it's about engaging with people on the issues of national concern or local concern, so that the input of the people, their concerns and their thoughts and their solutions can be brought into account in developing policy and programs which will ultimately be rolled out for their benefit. I am going to talk on a few matters tonight, and you'll be hearing from my three colleagues on some other portfolio areas as well. And I wanted to say something about education, because we are in a situation in Jamaica where, as Peter Bunting has said, low productivity is a problem. And the productivity of our workforce has been in decline for many years. And in fact, since 2007, we've heard that the output per worker has fallen by 21%. And it's very difficult for an economy to grow and for wealth to be created for our people if productivity is falling. And one of the main reasons or causes of low productivity is the underperformance of the education system and the training system of the country. And we know from various studies that the situation that Jamaica finds itself in now is one where at the primary school level, over 30% of our primary school students who leave primary school to enter secondary school cannot read and write, cannot do simple, basic arithmetic, and cannot understand passages written in plain English. So this is a huge problem. It is not that those children are not bright, but they are lacking the benefit of an education system and a wider system of support which enables them to reach their potential. We cannot develop a nation where we're faced with those kind of statistics. So we are very concerned about that, and we have come up with some policy proposals which we believe will assist to set that right. For example, we know that investment in early childhood development is a critical element in this, and we intend to look at that very carefully to ensure that basic schools are strengthened and that, if necessary, more of them will become infant schools, where the state has a much more critical role in the life of those schools, so that when children are entering the primary school system, there is a better chance that they are ready for the curriculum of primary school. And we know at primary school and secondary school, absenteeism is a big problem. And if you're suffering from learning loss because you're not attending school 5 days a week, that really adds up and creates a deficit in your ability to handle the work and learn what you're supposed to be learning. One of the major causes of absenteeism is the cost to many parents of providing lunch money to their children.
Sure.
And we have said this is unacceptable. A recent UN report published said that Jamaica is suffering from moderate to severe food security at the level of 55% of our people. Of every 100 Jamaicans living in Jamaica, 55 of them are suffering from moderate to severe food insecurity. That means they're not getting the nutrition they need. They're either not eating the necessary number of meals, or what they're eating is not healthy food. So we are going to expand the school feeding program substantially and ensure that every needy child attending primary school or secondary school will get at least one hot, nutritious meal every day. That is a commitment of the People's National Party. And our intention is to expand that to include breakfast as well, as the economy improves and fiscal space is created. But we are starting with at least one hot, nutritious meal a day. We know that there is another cause of absenteeism, and that is the cost of transportation, especially for rural school children who may have to take bus or taxi, and they don't have a state-subsidized system. Presently, I believe on the path, around 7,500 students benefit from a subsidy on transportation costs. We are going to expand that substantially to 20,000 households will get that benefit for a student every day, and in the form of a weekly subsidy that will go towards reducing the transport costs that they have to bear. And it's going to be a meaningful amount that will substantially cover the cost of going to school and coming back every day of the school week. And we are going to expand that again to the point where we're covering everybody we need to cover as the economy improves. But by starting with 20,000 vis-a-vis what is now on offer, it will be a substantial improvement. We also recognize the importance of tertiary education in terms of offering opportunities for wealth creation for people. And we recognize that in families where they have not had anyone who's attended a tertiary institution, whether it be a university or a college, the chances are that poverty can be handed down from one generation to the next in that scenario. So we have come up with the First in Family program, which is a scholarship that the state will provide to any child or any student who qualifies for a tertiary institution, whether it be a university or a college, if they are from a household where there has never been a university tertiary graduate before. So if you're going to be the first person from your family to attend university or college, you'll get a full scholarship from the government. And we think this is going to be transformational for those families, because the student who gets that benefit will no doubt enter the job market with the benefit of that and will be in a position to help their siblings also step up the ladder. And so we see this as a transformational measure in terms of getting people out of the trap of poverty. For Student Loan Bureau, we have a special mix of ideas that we intend to implement. Right now, we know that for many students, especially from low-income houses, there's a lot of concern about borrowing to invest in their education. Because if they end up not getting the job that they were hoping for, and they struggle with the loan payments, what has been happening is that the Student Loan Bureau has been outsourcing to debt collectors to collect on these loans, and they end up sometimes having their name in the newspaper or being harassed by debt collectors. So we want to give some of those students a fresh start. And we've said, if you're in a situation where you're a student loan borrower and you have found it difficult, you've come into difficulties financially to maintain your payments, we are going to offer you an amnesty, and we're going to waive all past penalties and arrears interest and allow you to bring your loan current, the principal of it, and continue to be on the track from there. But more importantly, going forward, we are going to cap your monthly payments under your loan at a percentage of your actual income, a manageable percentage of your actual income, so that you know that your loan payments, whatever your job may be, will be something that you can manage without having to eat up most of what you're earning to service your loan. And furthermore, if you fall into a period of difficulty, whether it be unemployment, for example, we will allow those payments to be suspended, and for that period until you get back on your feet, and the payments which you have missed will be tacked onto the back end of the loan without penalties or interest, extra interest on that. So this is something that we encourage young people to invest in their education, because the terms of the loan will be designed to make it as user-friendly and borrower-friendly as possible. We are also committed to taking all taxes off of laptops and tablets for students and teachers, so that devices are more affordable. And we also want to provide additional support for students with special needs, which is a growing area, and an area which is grossly underserved. We need to really put more resources in that area so that the diagnostic tests can be done and we can find out what difficulties there are early and put them on an appropriate pathway to dealing with their condition. So the school feeding program that we have come up with, we're calling it EASE, and the subsidy for rural transportation for students, we're calling that the RIDE program. I'm going to say something about healthcare. And you know, we know that the situation with healthcare in the country is very troubling. In fact, it has reached the point where it's really hurting the economy of the country, because we may be aware that last year, early last year, January, February, the US issued a travel advisory about visiting Jamaica. And for the first time, it wasn't just crime and violence, which has been something they have been focused on for many years, but this time they added worries about the state of the healthcare system and the ability to get access to proper healthcare if you have an accident or fall ill when visiting Jamaica. So healthcare has real economic implications for the country, because since that advisory, the number of visitors coming to Jamaica has been falling, and the revenues of the hotels have been falling. So it's impacting our foreign exchange earnings and the profitability of our hotel sector. And we know, for example, right here in this region, the mortality rate, the maternal mortality rate, that means women who die in childbirth, has gone up, I think, tenfold since we were last in government. And this is something which has not been sufficiently explained as to why this has been happening. And it's been happening under the watch of this government. So we are looking at the issue of healthcare and saying, how can we improve the system? And we know that Jamaica has a real challenge with some non-communicable diseases, in particular cancer, diabetes, which is sugar, and hypertension, which is pressure. And the problem we're having is that many people are not being screened for this. So they have it and they don't know. And we are going to be really focusing on screening our population for these major illnesses so that we can catch them early. Because when you catch them early, especially things like cancer, you have a much better chance of curing it and pushing it into remission and avoiding the big costs and other problems that are incurred where you catch it late. So screening, a national screening program is going to be a major plank of our approach to healthcare. We intend to also focus on the key facilities that would allow people's interactions with the public health system to be much more pleasant. So we know, for example, that we have numerous operating theatres in Jamaica that are not presently operative because of various relatively minor problems. There's a mold problem at KPH which knocked out many of the operating theatres there. We know Anato Bay Hospital was without an operating theatre recently. I don't know what the current situation is. So we are going to refurbish the major operating theatres in each parish, and we're going to have diagnostic equipment in each of the major facilities so that you can come here and come to whichever parish facility you choose, and you will be able to have your condition properly diagnosed, rather than all of these things having to be outsourced to private providers because the equipment is not being maintained in the public health system. We also want to roll out a system of urgent care centers to ease pressure on the major hospitals when it comes to accident emergency. And this is a well-known way of dealing with emergency matters, accidents and so on, and where you can go to a facility, in each parish will have one, and you can address the situation immediately to ensure that life is preserved, the patient is stabilized, and then, if necessary, the patient can then be transported to a hospital for further treatment. And of course, we need to support our medical professionals to encourage them to stay here in Jamaica and not migrate. So we're going to be looking at a variety of ways in which we can support our doctors and our nurses and others, whether it be training opportunities, whether it be housing opportunities, and of course, their remuneration. We're going to be looking at how we can address that as well. And preventive maintenance has to be a real priority for any government going forward. We have so much equipment in the country, medical equipment, which is not working because it has not been properly maintained. Hospital equipment and other infrastructure such as air conditioning units and elevators and so on. Focusing on the things that will keep those the equipment functional and make sure that their assets are usable for the lifetime that they were intended by the manufacturers. These are important ways in which we can create a much stronger health system and get better returns for our investments in healthcare. So these are some of the ideas we have in the healthcare area, and we want to ensure that when our citizens go to a public health facility, there are conditions that meet them, and the way in which they, the experience that they have is one that is not going to undermine their dignity and their confidence in the system. We have a situation currently where too often our people go to a public health system and they can't be admitted because there isn't a bed. They end up having to spend hours or days sitting on a bench or in a wheelchair in a corridor and so on, and many of them don't even survive that indignity, and we are committed to improving that situation. I'm going to say something about housing. And housing is very important because we're faced with a situation here in Jamaica today where there's a huge unfulfilled demand for affordable housing in the country. We have had real estate development over the last 10 years, but the real estate development that has gone on has really been for the benefit of those who are in a position to afford a house that is upwards of the 20s to 30s to $40 million. And many of our people don't have the wherewithal to access houses at those prices. So we estimate that we can, if we're very serious about it and focused, build 50,000 affordable houses over the next 5 years when we're in government. And, you know, we are aware that that would be a significant improvement on what's going on now. The Andrew Holness administration hasn't even built in their period in office 15,000 NHD houses over that period. And so many of our people are priced out of the market. They simply can't afford the $30 million plus houses that the NHD has been building. So how are we going to do this? First of all, we are committed to stopping the annual removal from the NHD of $11.4 billion, which has been going on now for far too long. It started in 2013 as a way that we had to deal with the situation with the IMF at that time. We had committed to doing it so that we could get into an IMF program because it was a very difficult time for Jamaica. The debt of the country was at a much higher level than it is now. And we were committed to do it for 4 years. At the time, the opposition at the time, the JLP opposition, criticized us heavily for doing that. In fact, an affiliate of theirs brought a court case to try and prevent it happening, but they lost that case. But we were not intending to do it beyond the 4-year period that the law was amended to allow for. They then came to office in 2016, and soon thereafter amended the law to extend that period for another 4 years, and they did it again for another 4 years after that. So what it means is that in the last 10 years, over $130 billion has been taken out of the National Housing Trust to help fund the budget. So when they talk about no new taxes, one of the ways in which they do that is by depleting the National Housing Trust of its resources. We are committed to putting an end to that because we see the National Housing Trust, which was a critical innovation in the 1970s of Michael Manley, as a way of dealing with the housing shortage for persons who need assistance to get a house. So we are also intending to create a fund within the National Housing Trust with the additional resources that it will have of $1 million per year, which will go towards paying the deposit for a first-time home buyer And we are looking really at targeting younger people for this, up to 35 years old, who have been contributors to the fund for up to 2 years, at least 2 years. They will be eligible, if it's their first home they're buying, to draw down under that fund and get a $500,000 grant to help them cover the deposit, which is a major issue for many first-time buyers. We also have come up with an innovation that we call rent to own. And we are aware that many people who make their money through a little business, a little hustling, or maybe they're working for somebody, but that is not a very well-established business that they're working in. They don't get a pay slip, a formal pay slip, every time they get paid. And they are not, therefore, in a position to prove their income so as to qualify for an HP loan. And we have said, hold on, that affects so many people, we have to have a proper solution for that. And so what we've said is, we will allow persons in that situation to go into possession of the home as a tenant initially, at a level of rental which is equivalent to what the mortgage would be. And if they are able to make, and do make, their monthly payments on a time, for a period of time that we feel is sufficient to show that they can service a loan, and we're thinking of 6 months, at that point we would say they've proved their income without the pay slip. And they can then draw down on the mortgage, become an owner of the property, and move forward and the ownership ladder. We also want to offer how persons who are purchasing a home using NHT funding, we want to offer them an opportunity for a 3-month moratorium after they draw down on the mortgage. Because we know that currently they have to start making payments right away. But for many people, when they buy a house, they have other expenses and they need a little time, for example, to furnish the house and so on. So we're going to give a 3-month moratorium period before they start to make their payments. And I think this will be much appreciated by anyone who's drawing down a mortgage to buy a house. And very importantly, because of all the money that has been taken out of the NHT over the years, the last 10 years in particular, we are going to identify public lands that are suitable for housing, not arable lands, lands that are suitable for housing. And we're going to make them available to the NHT for development. And when those houses are being built and sold, we will not put the value of the land in the price of the house, so that a buyer can just pay for the house at the cost of the building the house without the land value being part of it. And that will provide a significant saving for the purchase of the house. In some instances, up to $3 million by our estimate. And right here in Manchester, Senator Floyd Morris has assured me that he's been in touch with our MP and MP candidates, and we know that every constituency in this parish will receive at least 500 of these low-income houses over the next 5 years. MP Nikhil Phillips has identified some lands where lands that can be used for agriculture and housing developments in Northwest and others and so on. So we're really looking at the specifics now, and we're not waiting to form government before we get this ready. And we have another program, we call it Porsche, which is an acronym for a lot of words. But essentially what the Porsche program is about is focusing on communities that need renewal, whether it be urban communities or rural communities, including informal settlements. And we will be looking at, first of all, completing all the Operation Pride schemes across the country that have been left unattended. People are living there. We want to complete the infrastructure if the infrastructure is incomplete, and complete the titling process so that they can become owners of those lots. And there are many very successful Operation Pride schemes. I visited several of them, and some of those, the houses that have been built there are wonderful. But there are others where there are still infrastructure needs that need to be addressed, and we intend to do that. But we'll also be tearing down the zinc fences and building concrete walls and chain link fences, and we'll be improving sidewalks for senior citizens and persons with disabilities. And Ladies and gentlemen, another area that I want to touch on quickly relates to values and attitudes and the moral compass of the nation. We have seen such a deterioration in that over the years, and it's manifested in some of these horrible things we hear about almost every day in Jamaica. We hear about students, females going missing and killed. We hear about little girls being raped and murdered. We hear about a nurse being beaten up on the public road in the most disgraceful manner. And then we really need to get back to a place where we show each other respect and love. And so I intend to promote a movement that will be led by civil society and the churches and any other well-thinking Jamaicans who believe that this is an important issue, where we're going to be promoting the kind of behaviors and attitudes towards each other that can make us a more loving country, a more caring country, a country where people want to stay and to live. And we believe this is very important, because if we continue down the road that we're on now, you know, we're going to, each of us will be increasingly traumatized by what we come across and hear of the depravities on a daily basis. And you know, all of this requires leadership in public life. And I am committed to strengthening the agencies that are there to root out corruption in the country, the Integrity Commission in particular, which is under attack from this government. We are fully supportive of it. We only ask of them that they operate in a proper and ethical manner themselves, and that they follow due process in how they deal with people. But we intend to fully resource them as they need to be, and give them necessary legal tools if there are any changes that need to be made to the law. You know, we do not countenance a situation in which leaders of the country are under a cloud when it comes to matters to do with corruption. To my mind, the situation that now exists in Jamaica, where the Prime Minister of the country can't have his integrity declarations certified because there are unanswered questions about how he acquired the wealth that he has, and where that matter is being referred, or has been referred, to the FID, the Financial Investigations Division, which is the financial crimes investigative arm of government, which is being depleted of resources as we speak, no doubt because it suits some of them not to have a robust agency. We are dead against that. We feel that really is a disqualifying factor from anybody seeking to represent people in public life. And Jamaica needs to get to the place where we don't allow that sort of thing to taint our public affairs. And we are committed, and I am committed, to leading a government which is above board, where hanky-panky is not tolerated, and where our members of our government understand that they will, if they're slip them slide, and there will be consequences. All of our shadow spokespersons in the Senate, in the House of Representatives, and those who are not in Parliament have signed the Integrity Commission's Code of Conduct for Leaders. All of us have signed that Leadership Code of Conduct. Not one of the JLP MPs or senators has signed it. Why, I don't know. It embraces the 7 principles of good governance, which are international benchmarks and standards for running affairs of people properly, and yet they haven't signed it. So they're not really on the right path at all, and the country needs to get a new government which is embracing wholesome values and attitudes, which doesn't have this cloud of corruption, nepotism, and cronyism hang over it, whether it be a drill or whether it be fertilizer, which was given to the country by the Kingdom of Morocco for our farmers who needed the fertilizer. And then cronies and connected persons are selling it to the farmers who are in distress. This kind of thing is disgraceful, and we can't continue like this as a country. So, I say to you, the majority of Jamaicans believe that our country is heading in the wrong direction, and we must change course. Not with blame or derision, but with vision and will. Let us build a Jamaica that is just, that is prosperous, and united. Our party has taken principled positions on matters to defend the Constitution in the interests of the people of our country, and the courts have ruled over and over again in our favor. You can rest assured that we will uphold and defend the Constitution, the rights and freedoms of our people, whatever may come, because that is what we're sworn to do. So, ladies and gentlemen, tonight is one stop on a national journey, and we will get the chance to share your voice and your vision, and let's build this country together, a Jamaica where everyone matters and no one is left behind. I thank you.
Amen. See you.
Well, now you know why we're the better team. Because we have the better leader. And I've been given the task by the next Prime Minister to speak on the portfolios of transport and mining, and I'll touch a little bit on the works portfolio also. Transportation contributes about 9% to the country's GDP, which is about 23 billion US dollars. So it shows you how important the transport sector is to the country's growth. Most of the time we consider transportation to deal with the movement of people, but it is wider than that. It's about movement of goods. It's have to deal with land, sea, and air. Now, in the 9 years of this administration, they have gone through 4 ministers of transport. And after trying 4 ministers of transport, the sector is worse off than they got it from us in 2016. So, when you look at the JUTC, and I'll just give you a little example. The JUTC in 2016 had a revenue base of about $4.1 billion. In 2024, the revenue of the JUTC was a mere $1.5 billion. In 2016, we were rolling out about 400 buses every day, between 400 and 450 buses. In 2024, there were just above 250 buses, and in some instances below. The JUTC was formed in 1988, great sacrifice by the then P.J. Patterson government, 1998, sorry, by the then P.J. Patterson administration. Great sacrifice, not only to the taxpayers, but to the private investor, the franchise holders. And it is for us, a People's National Party administration, to protect the legacy that was built in the JUTC. When you look at the amount of licenses that have been given out or been the transport authorities to the route taxis and hackney carriage operators. Today, we have over 100,000 Jamaicans that have been given the license. No, we don't have a problem with the amount that has been given the license. The issue that we have is that we have a transport sector that neither the private investors, those who have a license, and the 1 million dependent Jamaicans on public transport is benefiting at all. So when you look at the system now, there's inadequate space after giving one a license for him to park. So the transport authority issues a license. Then the same transport authority come to prosecute because not enough space has been provided. It is something that, as a People's National Party administration, we're going to put on the forefront, not only in the Kingston metropolitan area, but island-wide. Because as you have it now, is that the municipal corporations have the responsibility, with no input from central government, and where we don't have enough space, we will have to work with the municipal corporations in ensuring that these spaces are modern space for those operators and for the traveling public. Because we are not choosing Jamaica just now, because we chose Jamaica a long time ago. When you look at the KMTR, for a person leaving Portmore or Spanish Town has to wait about 2 hours to 3 hours to catch a JUTC bus. What we will do is to expand the fleet coming from Portmore and Spanish Town using articulated buses. And we have started, myself and Julian and the comrade leader, have started to do the research to see how it is that we can facilitate and to finance over the period, and how it is that we can introduce light rail from Portmore and Spanish Town going into downtown Kingston, where we're not moving 30 persons on a JUTC bus at a time, but we're moving hundreds at a time. Because if we are to increase productivity, we have to get it right where public transport is concerned. And the People's National Party administration will take the time in getting it right.
Yes, sir.
We have, I mentioned it about 4 years ago in my sectoral presentation, about a rural school bus system and also a rural system to move the disabled and just general public. But we believe, since we have 100,000 Jamaicans who are investors in the transport sector, is that we have to find a way to incorporate them in a broader transport system. So we're not against the current school bus system that the minister has rolled out. What we have an issue with is how will we service that rural bus system. One, these buses are over 10 years old. Each of those buses come with over 150,000 miles, not kilometers, miles. If the minister had said that he was going to introduce 10, as others who want to sell buses to the JUTC have to do, because before Peter Bunting, who may run a dealership, wants to sell buses to the JUTC, he would have to give them at least a minimum of 2 or 3 buses to run in the fleet to ensure that they are able to manage the road system and the load. In this instance, the minister decided to buy 100 buses without testing them on our roadways and seeing if they can work with our topography. But also, to roll out majority of those buses in rural Jamaica, as it is today, the infrastructure is not there, 1, for them to park, 2, for them to be serviced, and 3, for them to be refueled. So let us use, for example, the bus that is running to St. Thomas, to Morant Bay. That bus, once what we call dead leg over to St. Thomas on the last route so that it can come back early in the morning. They have to park it at the police station. At the police station. Because the infrastructure for the JUTC is not there. And as the party leader mentioned in his own presentation, the right program, because we're going a little bit more by saying that we want private investors involved in a rural school bus system, but not only for school children, but for the disabled community. And what we will do is give them a card that they can use with the private operators. And then the private operators come and redeem it. But we will give a subsidized fare to those school children. So it's not only running from Christiana to Mandeville, but it would be from Balaclava to Mandeville, or South Manchester, right across. So it is not limited to only our town centers. So we're expanding it, but it is important that we include our private investors, because for too long we have treated our private investors, our taxi operators, as hustlers, and we want to treat them as investors in a bigger transport sector. So our promise, and there's more for me to say, but I'm presenting on Tuesday in Parliament, so I have to leave some for them. But our commitment is that in our first 100 days in government, we will present to the country a comprehensive transport plan, not only for the Kingston metropolitan area, but island-wide, which will include parking, which will include what we spoke about in the RIDE program for our school children, a comprehensive transport plan for the Jamaican people. Because we chose Jamaica a very long time ago, not just now. The bauxite industry contributes significantly to our GDP and for foreign exchange. We have seen a backward trajectory from this administration on the bauxite industry, be it to issue land titles, be it to do research, be it to protect the people who are affected mainly by bauxite mining. There are many questions to be asked, because we heard that GISCO would be closed for 2 years. It is going about 5 years now, and we have not heard a thing from the administration on what will happen to GISCO. There are many bauxite lands, and I raised it in my last sectoral presentation last year, that bauxite companies have to be held accountable for the reclamation of lands. There are too many bauxite lands that a little, if you know the law, is that if, I think it's 5% of the bauxite is left on the land, then they don't have to reclaim it. Yes? And many are leaving some on the land because they don't want to spend the money to reclaim. Those lands have to be reclaimed when we get in government and given back to the people of Jamaica. But we have to look outside of just bauxite mining, because there are other industries within the mining sector that has to be given attention. Because when you look at the type of mining that is done in Sentan, medical grade, but we don't have the facilities across the island to be able to expand. So it is something that a PNP administration will have to look at. In what are the new winners within the mining sector, and at the same time to protect our environment. So we are making a commitment into getting the titles, the hundreds of titles that are still locked up in a safe in the hands of those who are waiting years to get their titles so that they can build on their land, to borrow money to build a decent house, or to be able to borrow from the NHT to build a house. What we don't want are for these communities that are mined out left worse off than when the bauxite companies found them. And our duty is to protect the people of Jamaica, and that will be our first duty. I'm going to just touch a little bit on roads. Spark now spark, and reach never reach. The administration has decided to use Spark as a marketing tool, that it is the answer to our road situation. So I did a little research. The NAA would need about $40 billion annually for routine maintenance, and an additional $40 billion annually for periodic maintenance. That's $80 billion. The Spark program is $40 billion over 2 years. 90% of our road infrastructure is classified as bad. So even after the Spark program, probably about 4 to 5 roads per constituency would see any major road works done on it. And in some instances, not the whole complete road. That means the other 100 plus roads in these constituencies right across the island will not even get 1 ounce of asphalt. And I hear the Minister of Works, or the shadow in that ministry, speaking about a one road authority. Let me just say it clearly. A PNP administration sees the importance of the municipal council corporation in maintaining our road network. But secondly, if you're going to speak about a one road authority, we have to speak about how it is that we're going to fund it first before you even change in coming under one umbrella. And we have said over and over, the only way for us to be able to do justice to the people of Jamaica by having a proper routine maintenance program is that there has to be a dedicated fund, a road maintenance fund that we can draw down to, because we will never, ever be able to finance what is required in maintaining our roads from the central government budget. We have to start thinking differently, and we are willing to think differently when it comes to road maintenance and construction. So we're proposing a quarterly bushing and maintenance program, going back to the Lengthman program, re-establishing the road maintenance fund, and for every road that is constructed, rehabilitated, that it is handed over with a maintenance program from start, not waiting until the road is mashed up, but from start, that does periodical bushing, drain cleaning, and patching. Because we owe it to the Jamaican people to give them more than they're getting right now. So, listen out on Tuesday. I'll be saying more in my sectoral presentation. But the time has come for bold leadership, and we are ready for the people of Jamaica to not do things the same way, but in a different way for the benefit of all Jamaicans. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. I'm just going to give a context as to where we are with the Jamaican economy. We have had an incredible 10 to 15 year period where we have halved our national debt from about 140% to now 68 and trending downwards. And that has been a national effort started by Portia Simpson and Peter Phillips when we came back into office and has continued. It's important to know where it started. It's like a relay, but the heavy lifting started with us. But it's been a necessary but not sufficient condition. The Jamaican economy since independence has grown on average 1% per year. The data that the PIOJ put out yesterday indicated that for the first quarter of 2025, we grew by 0.8 of 1%. The projection for the next 3 fiscal years is 1% growth. That can move the economy forward, that can lift living standards, and that can provide the resources and the tax revenues to provide the social services that all Jamaicans need. So what do we plan to do differently? And we have a 4E plan. On education, the party leader has already spoken extensively about that. So I'm going to go to next, energy. Is it possible for us to grow our economy at when the cost of energy is as high as it is? We're paying on average about US 40 cents per kilowatt hour. Important to note, when we left office in 2016, we were about 24 cents. Now, a lot of people don't we measure corruption by how much they thief, and these people have stolen a lot. But we don't measure corruption by the destruction of institutions and the impact it has on our sector. So the reason we have high energy costs is not just, it just happens so. It's because the government has really done very little over the 9-year period to bring down the cost of energy. So when we were in office, we had issued a request for proposals for renewable energy. That was in 2013. That led to the build out of new solar farms, the expansion of Wigton, which ultimately is the only way we can bring down the cost of energy, because we import heavy fuel oil and LNG. It's taken the government 8 years to put out additional requests for proposals to add new renewable energy to the grid. And those companies were selected last year, and the build-out will probably take another 18 to 24 months. And so that build-out will happen when we are in office. But you can't bring down the cost of energy when you take 8 years to issue an RFP. You have to be doing this every 2 to 3 years. And so our commitment is to bring down the cost of energy by ensuring that we add renewables to the grid, but also to look at the JPS license and to make changes to how it operates. There's something called net billing, where you get a license if you generate your own electricity by solar or wind, and you sell back to JPS. The rates that are given to individuals and companies are woefully inadequate and don't provide an incentive for persons to participate. We have to revisit that. We have to look at something called wheeling, where if you're a business with multiple locations, you can provide, if you can generate energy in one location, you can provide it to your other locations. We have to ensure that our special economic zones, that players in the special economic zones can generate and provide their own electricity. We also have to deal comprehensively with the heat, which adds about 20% to our electricity bills. We started a program back in 2020. It really didn't continue. Again, mainly because of the corruption. They had to close down Nesol after them teeth that up and corrupted it. And so the level of investment needed to rewire houses, install prepaid meters, that wasn't done. They have now announced a program that they're going to try to do what really should have been done over a long period of time. So the second E is energy, and Philip Powell, who transformed our telecom sector, has really given a lot of thought and effort into what we will do when we get back into office. And it also impacts cost of living, because if I ask you what is the largest bill that you pay, it is going to be your electricity bill. The third E relates to efficiency. Government is the largest player in our economy. And what we've seen over the last 3 years is that this government has been unable to spend what is called a capital budget. You have two types. You have your capital in your recurrent pays salary and other expenses. Your capital goes to building new roads, hospitals, etc. In fact, last year, they underspent the capital budget by $19 billion out of a capital budget of about 50. We are committed to making government more efficient in what is called the public investment management system. So it doesn't take 2 years for a project to go through that evaluation to determine whether you go ahead. I think it took them 3 years to make an assessment on the Troy Bridge before work would start. You can't run an efficient economy that way. We're also going to look at the procurement system while preserving the integrity of the system to ensure that we can get projects out more quickly. Because if government can't spend its own money, it impedes the level of growth that you can have. And one of the biggest impediments to growth is how this government has structured itself, with the Prime Minister at OPM and as Minister of Economic Growth, having control of the largest chunk of ministries, agencies, and departments, which has created a bottleneck where simple approvals have to go to the Prime Minister's desk. And so projects are held up for inordinate periods of time, simply because one person has to sign off on them. So efficiency is an integral part of how we plan to move forward. We recognize that for any economy to grow, businesses need access to funding. And we've seen the nature of the banking sector in Jamaica is that it's dominated by two large banks who control about 70% of the market. So just 2 days ago, the Bank of Jamaica reduced its interest rates by 25 basis points, which would represent the 5th reduction in the last year and a half. So they have reduced interest rates collectively by about 125 basis points. But there's been no movement from the banks. No movements, not on your mortgage, not on loan rates. And we can't grow the economy if businesses continue to pay the very high rates for capital. Now, we can plead, we can beg, we can beseech, but government plays a role. The government has access as the single largest player in the economy in terms of the deposits that are held in these institutions. We're saying we're going to implement a system where those deposits don't automatically go to the two largest banks, but we have a mechanism where there's equitable distribution of those deposits. Because even if new players enter the market, once the two largest players who control the market have access to those deposits, then there's no incentive to respond to the Bank of Jamaica when they reduce interest rates. And even, it's something I propose. There was some pushback and criticism, but the Ministry of Finance just 2 weeks ago issued a request for a proposal to examine a system that will ensure that we have more equitable distribution of government-held deposits, which should increase the competitiveness of the banking sector so that the banks can be more responsive to movements in the policy rates. We've also made a commitment that we will eliminate over a 5-year period the asset tax, which has been a burden on banks and which was introduced initially because we had to run a very high fiscal surplus in the 2012-2016 period, but the current government has maintained. So efficiency is a central part of what we plan to do. Our fourth E relates to our emerging economies. And the emerging economies really revolve around our cultural and creative industries. The types of industries that have made Jamaica punch way above its weight. Or musicians, or artists, or painters, or potters, or athletes. all of them who contribute significantly to brand Jamaica, but who earn significant sums of foreign exchange. It's a very informally organized industry. We are going to establish a fund of $1 billion that will support the cultural and creative industries. We're going to provide the support in terms of not just funding, but helping people with their business plans, converting ideas into a business so that they can grow those businesses. And we provide the technical support as well to help those industries. So we're looking at industries that can provide a platform for growth. The cultural and creative industries is one. Agriculture, but I'll leave Dane to speak to that. Logistics. Jamaica is ideally located that when you come out of the Panama Canal, we're the first country that you hit, and then we can act as a port for many different things. Transshipment, legitimate transshipment, we do other forms of transshipment, but legitimate transshipment, but also for value-added manufacturing, for assembly of different components in electronics, etc. Ship repair, which is now taking place. So there are a number of industries that we can develop, and there was a logistics master plan that was developed when we left office, but hasn't really been implemented. And those are the kinds of jobs which are going to be the high-tech jobs where people can earn good salaries and will want to stay in Jamaica. Because Jamaica, and Peter Bountin said it, we are stuck in a low wage, low productivity, and low growth model. And we will never be able to move out of that unless we tackle the inequities in our education system, which our leader has spoken to, tackle the inefficiencies that structurally exist in the economy, and identify and provide support for those sectors which provide the opportunity for real growth. We are committed to it. We have spent a lot of time looking at what needs to be done once we get into office. And we are confident that we can move our growth rate from the 1 and 2% to 4 and 5 and 6%, earn the tax revenues that are needed so that we can improve our health, our education, our public transportation, and all the other sectors which are critical to the kind of economy that we want to create, where all Jamaicans feel comfortable to live, do business, and bring up their families. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Everybody still with me? Let me say to our future Prime Minister, in the next coming weeks we will go to King's House for the swearing in of Mark Jefferson Golding as the Prime Minister today. My colleagues on the platform, brothers and sisters, greetings. Agriculture, the forgotten child in the family. Agriculture is the main employer of labor in Jamaica. Currently, we have 262,000 registered farmers in Jamaica. It is on record the largest employer of labor. And of the economic activities that we do, especially in rural Jamaica, agriculture is responsible for 80% of it. Either people who directly practice in agriculture or people who run the cook shop, they do the different things, but they rely on the produce from the farmers. Agriculture is an important area for us to focus on. And you would have heard the leader earlier when he spoke, that one of the first things that we need to do is to stop taking the arable lands in the country and using them for other purpose other than for agriculture. And that is a commitment of a future People's National Party government. In terms of making land available to people as well, we do not believe that we should continue in a situation where you have grown to see father and grandfather and mother and grandmother farming in a little square with pickaxe and machete and those sort of things, and they're dirty and they're still in poverty. So what we want to do is to look at an inventory of all the arable lands in the country, and then to see how we can make lease available to farmers, so you can lease a good plot up to 5 acres of land and go there and produce to feed our nation. A few years ago we did agri-parks, and in Manchester there's the Dove House agri-park that is here. And when we developed the agri-parks, what we intended from it was to increase local production of some of these items that are produced in the agri-parks. Currently, we have 1,950 hectares in the agri-parks, but this government only has 30% of that under production. These agri-parks have in the infrastructure. They have road, they have drainage, they have water, yet still only 30% of the land in the agri-parks are currently being used for any form of production. That is the clearest indication that this current administration has no interest in local agriculture. That has led to them importing, which is now detrimental to our local farmers. If we look at the country's importation bill, when we left office in 2016, importing $834 million worth of farm produce into the country. Last year, the import bill went up to $1.6 billion, almost a 100% increase over the last 9 years under this administration. They have absolutely no interest in supporting local agriculture. We later learned that former members of parliament of that side are given import licenses to bring in onions when they have never planted anything for a day in their life. So we have said, when we look at the maths, we realize that when you import food, and don't let them fool you that it is the price of the goods that has gone up, that has caused the increase, because the increase in the tonnage is roughly the same. We have looked at the numbers and we have realized that when we import those items, you pay tariff, yes? And who didn't know what that was, you know now since Brother Trump is elsewhere. And from those tariff and stamp duties, we have collected on average $707 million over the last 10 years. We are going to take 2.5% of that to put into a dedicated fund for agriculture. Health as the National Health Fund. Tourism as the Tourism Enhancement Fund. Technology as the Universal Service Fund. Our farmers will have the Agricultural Development Fund with a specialized fund that is geared towards our farmers. And because our leader knows that agriculture is so vital to our people, he has said that when we put that fund together, we must ensure that a percentage of it goes to the PC bank so that we can give loans to our farmers so they can go there and produce. We will also ensure that we protect our farmers against the vagaries of weather. Different things that happen, rain and storm and drought and all of those things. Every other business that you operate in, they have some form of insurance. Our farmers are left out there on their own. Storm come, drought come, they lose everything. We want to put a percentage of it, which will not be only funded by us. This has to take input as well from the farmers themselves, but to ensure that some insurance is in place so that you do not lose everything, but you can start over should you suffer from any of these disasters. A vital thing that we need to look at as well is the issue of land preparation. You're not going to attract as many persons to come and work on the farm as we were able to do 10, 15, 20 years ago. And additionally, we need to adapt with time. And so, what we are going to do is to look at the heavy production areas, and we are going to ensure that we buy the heavy duty equipment and put them in those areas so that the farmers can get assistance with land preparation. So the Irish potato farmers up in Devon, in northeast Manchester, will be able to get some help with land preparation. The next issue that we want to look at is the infrastructure. The infrastructure. We are going to put more attention on farm roads. When you ask the next PNP government for assistance with farm road to get to your farm, we will not offer you a donkey nor a mule. We are going to ensure that we build farm roads so you can get to your farm and take out your produce from your farm. In the era of irrigation, in Jamaica we have 120,000 hectares of arable land that is suitable for farming. Only 15% of it is currently under irrigation. Whenever anybody talks about it, the minister loves to jump up and say what he's doing in the southern plains of Clarendon or for Essex Valley, not taking note of the fact that it was the National Irrigation Development Plan of the PNP from 1998 that outlined the 51 schemes that we are to build across Jamaica, and that they have been tardy in building out those. So we are going to put a special unit in the ministry that is their only duty to complete the implementation of the National Irrigation Development Plan. It is our desire in our first term in office to move the percentage of land that is under irrigation up to 25%. It is an ambitious target, but we are people who are born with ambition. We will also look at how we can create other systems. Michael Mandeville was on to something from in the 70s of microdams. We're talking about ponds as well. From the Agricultural Development Fund, we'll be able to help farmers to dig ponds in the different areas, and for them to be able to get pond liners if it is not clay, and then get the necessary irrigation pumps so that they can get irrigation on their farms. So whereas in Duffels, Peterbean, South Manchester, they can grow scallion and thyme because they have good irrigation, the other areas in South Manchester needs to benefit from irrigation as well so that they can have good produce. In the area of storage, in Jamaica, after taking on all the risk and finish producing your things and you harvest it, you reap it, people still lose 30% of their produce because of a lack of storage. 30%. And that's at the farm gate, because by the time you take it to the market, you take it to the house, the post harvest loss in Jamaica is over 50%. But at the farm gate, you lose 30% of what you produce because we do not have sufficient storage. It is obviously sensible to look at the country and do an inventory and see where we can build out proper storage facility. They're doing a storage facility in Southeast St. Elizabeth now, but that's not enough. We believe that in the heavy production belts, we believe that you can put a 40-foot container that is solarized in those areas and allow the farmers to have temporary access to somewhere that they can store their produce whilst we do the inventory and build out the storage. Because when you produce, you should not be forced to sell your produce for what left, for little than nothing, because there's a glut on the market or you don't have storage. You should be able to store it, and when the price is right, you can sell it and make adequate returns so you can take care of your loved ones. In the area of perennial lastly, We want to put Pray There Last Day under the Proceeds of Crime Act, so that when somebody steals from you and they are convicted of stealing, then the courts can give the order for us to liquidate what they have, so we can return the farmer to the state they were in before the thief came into their life. It should not continue where you have your 25 goats and a man come and thief your 25 goats and then get a suspended sentence. That man that thief your 25 goats, if the markets him have, let us sell the markets and buy back the 25 goats to give to the farmer. We also want to look at a proper agriculture management system. In 2025, it ought not to be that the Minister of Agriculture cannot wake up in the morning and know how much Irish we have in Huntley on the production in Northwest Manchester, or how much Escallion we have over in Duff House, or how much sweet potato we have, or yam we have up in Creggan. We ought to know what we have growing in banana ground in central Manchester. The Minister of Agriculture is to know what is under production, when it will come to maturity, and what will be the expected yield. That way we can plan and control the permits, so that we do not allow permits when our local farmers have produced the items. That management system should also link into the hotels and to other final distributors of the items, so they can see what is out there and they can make their arrangements with the farmer. Currently, people sit in the middleman, and they earn all the money. The farmer goes out there and produces an item. They come to the farm and take all the risks of the rain mashing it up, of people thieving it, of people, animal coming over there, of pests, disease, all sorts of things. When the item comes, he gets $40 per pound at the farm gate. You go to one of the supermarket chain and you see the same item and sell for $160 a pound. Because somebody came, bought it from you for $40, carried it there and sold it for $100, so they made 60. And then the supermarket sell it for 160, so they're making 60 a pound as well. And the farmer that did all the work only made 40, and they put in all the input into it. We want to put the farmer directly in touch with the final distribution, so you can get value for your hard work. The school feeding program that the leader spoke about, that we want to provide a warm meal to every needy child that is in school. That will see PNP, next PNP government spending $9 billion more than the current school feeding program. That school feeding program, what we want the schools to do is to give us the menu for the entire semester. My son goes to a prep school, and I know on July 5 what are the options for his lunch. We want the schools to give us the menu. And then once we know what the items that are needed, we will know that we are going to need 500 pounds of pumpkin, 400 pounds of Irish. We will then meet with the farmers, send them to produce, and they will have a guaranteed market to sell their produce into the school feeding program. That $9 billion will be spent with our local farmers. We want to put forward as well our SMART program, Sustainable Management of Agriculture through Research and Technology. It is time for us to incorporate technology into what we're doing. 20 years ago, nobody knew what this was because it didn't exist. Now we can't live without it. Everybody in here has checked this at least one time since evening. We must incorporate technology into what we're doing. We must use drones to spray, to fertilize. We must use hydroponic systems to grow. And let me give you a little example. A hydroponic system just the size of this hall. I can set up a 5,000 plant hydroponic system the size of this hall. And if I'm growing lettuce, it is going to take me 4 to 6 weeks for it to mature in the hydroponic system. It would have taken 10 weeks in the soil. If I decide that I want to have some to sell every week, let me use 4 to 6 and let me use 5 weeks. I am going to plant 500 every week, so that in the 5-week period, I'll get to my 2,500. If each lettuce gets to £1, and I can sell it for $250 per pound, it means that I would have 500 by 250, which is what that? $125,000 that I would need per week, times 4, that's $500,000 that I would have made for the month. Way more than people are making in school as teacher, in hotels, in BPOs, and all of these sectors. And hydroponics is hot boy and hot girl farming, you know. It's hot boy and hot girl farming, you know. You can do it with your nails. Yes? There is no soil involved, because you really only need 3 things for crops to grow: water, sunlight, nutrients. So what we want to do is to be able to assist, especially our young people, for them to be able to acquire these systems and go into production. The next PNP government, after 2 to 3 years, should be able to identify how much Irish potato we consume, how much onion we consume, how much lettuce we consume, and we should be able to grow enough to satisfy the demand that is there and become self-sufficient in the production of those items. We want to also look at an agriculture-free zone, locating it in the special economic zone with export-led production. There are several items that we have a competitive advantage in, that people are clamoring for it anywhere in the world, especially our spices, ginger, turmeric, pimento, nutmeg, those items, and also some of the items that we can grow in orchards: breadfruit, ackee, mango, avocado. Those are things that we can put our people to produce and they can become rich. This is not fake prosperity. 1 acre of ackee can make you $2 million per year. 1 acre. And the international demand that is there, we cannot produce enough to satisfy it right now. So if you put 10 acres of ackee in an orchard, you can make $20 million per year. Agriculture is what we're going to use to take our people out of poverty. We want to also look at value added and going further along the value chain. Agro-processing. We need to be able to develop the appropriate spaces for agro-processing. It can't be that in mango season we have mango for slow man and dog, and then outside of mango season you can't find a mango, for the love of God. It has to be that we can put something in place so we do not have waste when the thing is in season and we can produce enough. Our students that are in school should not be drinking these heavy sugar drink, like when I didn't have to drink them juice and eat the sugar bun when I go to school. Because right after lunch is niggeritis used to set in. We need to be able to produce some of these fruit juices to go into the school feeding program. So agro-processing has to be a priority for the next People's National Party government. And finally, markets and marketing. We need to ensure that when our farmers produce, they can actually sell their produce with dignity. Space that is clean, appropriate, and fitting for the hard work that they have put into doing what they're doing. Additionally, it cannot be that we are able to stay in Jamaica and order an item in China, Shein and all of these things, but we can't stay in Jamaica and buy 5 pounds of lettuce and 5 pounds of Irish from a farmer that is in Jamaica. We have to use the technology to ensure that we can put the farmers in place with the consumers. So markets and marketing will also be a priority of the next People's National Party government. I will leave it at that because the night is far spent and I do not want you to fall asleep. I know you're not falling asleep because you have the money you have them up, so. But I will leave it at that and we'll be happy to take your questions. But just remember, there is wealth in the soil and we are going to use agriculture to ensure that the majority of the people in this country can earn a decent living and take care of their families. God bless you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, give them a round of applause. Panelists have been phenomenal. Information, programs, plans. Now, you have heard the plans. It is now your turn. But before we begin with our question and answer segment, we're going to change something on the platform.
Yes.
But I'll use the moment to recognize a few familiar faces. Mr. Trevor Heaven, businessman of Manchester. Mr. Kirk Ogilvie, I see you, I can't miss you, is also here. I see Mr. Bowes is also here, and other distinguished members that are in the audience. But I also wanted to pause to signal how much the information has resonated and the demographic that it has impacted. I want the young professional arm of the People's National Party to stand. The Patriots, please stand. This group, give them a round of applause. The young professional arm, a lot of these members are current councillors and councillors to be, headed by Ms. Candice Hales, President of the Manchester chapter.
Outside.
I want now the People's National Party youth arm to stand.
Young people.
Our young people, give them a round of applause. They are here to hear the plans and the messages and to bring it back to their communities. Look at them, they're all here, young and proud and engaged in the process. Thank you. Now, it is your turn. It is your turn to participate. Now for our question, answers, and recommendation segment. This is, in fact, a response to the presentations outlined with our presenters, them being able to respond accordingly, ensuring that you are not only informed, but are aligned with the correct reflection of any information relevant to the next administration's plans for action. We ask that contributors state their names and where they're from for the record. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I ask please keep your questions and recommendations very short and to the point so we can get around the room. Thank you, and let's begin. Mr. Dexter Martin, who is center, will assist you with a microphone if you have any questions at this time. For any of the members of the panelists.
Yes, ma'am.
Microphone?
Just.
Hi, good evening. My name is Sheree Lambert. I am from Mandeville. I'm a little bit nervous, I have my notes, but I'm going to put it down. Alright, so I'm wearing purple today because of domestic violence. I heard the party leader mention that we need to revise morals and values in the society. Now, in 2022, domestic violence rose to over 54%. Now, in 2024, it was over 8,600. That's the number of domestic violence cases that's reported. So can you imagine those that are not reported? Because some people are ashamed to really admit it. Now, if you look in here, they're mostly females, and we're all cute. One in four. For every 4 women in here, there's a probability that one has been abused. No, and that is, if we don't take it serious, we do. And one very uncomfortable fact, I'm going to make everybody here very uncomfortable right now, our children are the next set of abusers. So what are we going to be doing about that?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. It's a very difficult and sensitive topic, as you have said. I think you have to tackle these kind of cultural problems that we have from in a multifaceted, a kind of holistic approach. On the side of the stick, so to speak, the laws of the country need to be fit for purpose in dealing with these issues. And I was on a committee of parliament, a joint select committee that reviewed the Domestic Violence Act, the Sexual Offences Act, the Child Care and Protection Act, and one other. And we submitted a report which said that there should be further review and examination of the issue of domestic violence in particular, because we were covering such a wide range of issues to do with sexual offences and so on. We didn't have a chance to really focus on domestic violence. That committee must have been over 5 years ago. We're just now hearing about a committee which was appointed but has really been fairly dormant to look at the Domestic Violence Act. And it needs to be looked at thoroughly. It's not just about the penalties and so on, but it's also to do with how the realities of domestic situations, where often the victim is reluctant to pursue a case because they depend on the person who has victimized them for support, for them and their children. And the question is, how do you address that? And what kind of support can you provide to that victim so that they can come out of that situation if they have to? And also, to what extent can the state take a stand on an issue, even if the complainant is having second thoughts on it? I mean, we have a situation right now where there's a candidate for the Jamaica Labour Party, apparently, who was generally regarded as having committed a serious public offense of domestic violence with his common law wife at the time. It was caught on video. And that person, they said, had been expelled from the party, but now that person is back running for the party in the election that's about to take place, while all these parliamentarians are shedding tears for the other issues of domestic violence that are topical at the moment. So there's a real double standard there. We feel that there needs to be additional support in each parish. We want to establish a domestic violence support center in every parish of the country, so that women in particular, it's not only women, but mainly women who are the victims of this type of thing, have somewhere where they can go and get care and attention, and even counseling around their legal rights, and also around how to manage the relationship they're in if they need help with that. And then education is a critical part of it too. I think that we need to have appropriate guidance in schools that all of our students at the appropriate age are exposed to, that really teaches them that this is not an acceptable way of addressing conflicts in relationships, and that people must find other ways of dealing with these situations rather than resorting to hitting or hurting. somebody who they're in a relationship with. And if we can get that change at the younger levels, at the, hopefully as they grow up, they will themselves put into practice what they would have learned, and even influence their parents as well with what they have learned. There were two bills that have been tabled in Parliament in the name of the former Prime Minister Portia Simpson Miller at the beginning of 2016, I think it was, or the end of 2015, which sought to impose higher penalties, give the court a jurisdiction to give a serious uplift on a penalty where the victim of violence was a woman or a child. Nothing has been done about that. We lost the election before that legislation could be passed, and it has just laid dormant there. So I think it's an issue you have to tackle in many different ways. It's a cultural issue. You have to deal with it in that way as well. From the law enforcement side, from the cultural re-engineering side, and from the support to victim side as well. And we're committed to trying to really move the needle forward in that by looking at it holistically and really putting some emphasis beside each angle on it that needs to be given care and attention for us to make change. But thank you for your question.
Thank you. George Oliphant, Council of Mandeville Division, and also farmer also. My question is that we have to have agricultural policy. When we look and see Monimus, Innswood, Bernard Lodge, these were areas that produced the highest sucrose content of sugarcane in Jamaica. And all of these lands have been hurriedly converted to housing. As a result of that, you find that the arable lands that we have in and around Jamaica are put into housing, while those lands that are marginal should be the lands that should be in housing. I would like to see that we even start with one of these factories and get back those lands in production. Whether it's Monimus, Innswood. Innswood will have the highest rate of sucrose content, but unfortunately only a few acres leave now. But we need to get an industrial agricultural policy so that we can produce. The sugar industry, in full bloom, we have about 15 different sectors in the industry, which means that it's 15 different sectors being employed in just that one industry. And we need to look at these. We need to get back to the industrial policy and agricultural policy, so that we can make use of the few acres of arable lands that we have here. And Mr. Agriculture, I want you to pursue this so that we can have better life for our people in these areas. When sugar is running in Monimus, we know that down Clarendon, everything is good. Innswood is same. Bernard Lodge has been converted or want to be converted to a city. That's concrete. Our people need food to eat. We cannot eat concrete. And if we go on that way, what's going to happen is that we're going to still have to be importing food. So look at it, Minister.
One thing I would say though is that I was very encouraged when I met with a group of investors who were looking at investing in Monimus to revive it as a sugar producing entity. These were a group of investors from Guyana, India, and North America who were forming a consortium to do that. I mean, as we've seen from the history of the sugar industry, it's been very challenging economically to grow sugar and produce sugar rather efficiently in Jamaica. One or two private entities have been able to do that. But you know, if we can get people who really understand the industry to invest in it, then there are opportunities to revive aspects of it. But maybe some of the former sugar lands can be eventually put into other types of production as well. So you know, it's something we have to look at in a very cold and analytical way. But I was very encouraged to find that there were these people who were, and in fact, I mean, they are trying to get the access to those lands so they can make their investment. Next question.
Yes, good night everyone. Let me greet the panelists and the moderator. My name is Sherlock Robinson from Northeast Manchester. I have a concern here where, just to backtrack a bit, where it concerns to violence against women and children. Yes, we have heard all the protests and all the things going for the women. But what are we going to do for the men to help them to change the thought process or change the way they act towards women? Because I think if we can also help the men, then that will also help to combat and to allow this thing to go away. Maybe not immediately, but try to have maybe some town halls meeting or in the schools or in the church at a football match where we can, you know, spread the message to the men. Because I think most time these men, they listen to a lot of music and they're not hearing all these that have been said on the news, either in the printed media or the electronic media. So I think we need to try and do something to help the men, to help the ladies and the children, to allow crime or you say abuse against children and women to be lessened.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's all about the cultural shift. And I think if we can get the youngsters, the children, understanding that there's a better way, there's a more effective way of dealing with anger than trying to exert violence on persons around who we are supposed to be looking after and protecting, then I think, you know, we can have benefit from that. First of all, children can have an influence in the home on what their parents do and think, and also it will mean going forward as they mature, we're going to have a different attitude towards these issues. And I wouldn't limit it to children as well. I mean, there's a role for other forms of cultural re-engineering through public relations and so on, the role of the JIS, send the kind of messaging around, you know, how to deal with these issues without resorting to hurting somebody. But thank you for your point.
Good evening. My name is Owen Bartley, and I'm the owner of Unity Boat Farm here in Manchester. And this question is to Mr. Campbell. What are the plans going forward for the small ruminant sector? And we know we love curry goat, and we're importing a lot of imported meat. We don't even know what we're getting, you know. And being in the goat business myself, and I think everyone knows that I'm one of the top in the business. So I would like to know what the plans we have going forward right now. Because you see what's happening in the goat sector right now. There's a lot of money spending. Yeah, so not even about the pre-deal lawsuit, but I just want to know the plan of us going forward, because we can't get no land. We can't get nothing, we have to, you know, so your plans, I would like to hear about it.
Sir Bartley, it's good to see you. Good to have you here. So, yeah, champion farmer. And as you will recall, I visited your farm because I wanted some insights into small ruminants. But there are several things that we need to do. One, the physical space. So the land, as you have said, we need to be able to get the suitable lands into the hands of farmers, and we also need to be able to help them with proper goat houses as well. Because currently, most of them, they really just leave them out like that. And they become susceptible to predator last and other things. They could stray into other people's farms and those things, and you know, they just get rid of them because somebody is upset that they keep straying into their farm. So proper goat houses. We also need to look at how we upgrade the animal genetics as well. So, and not just for small ruminants, but in general, we've had a deterioration in the quality of the livestock in the country for a while. From cattle right now. With cattle, the lactating heifers are producing way less milk per day than they should. and that they used to and that they do elsewhere. 7 liters per day in Jamaica versus about 15, 16, up to 18 elsewhere. So upgrading the genetics is also critical. The measures that we put in place for prenatal lasting is also going to be important. How we assist persons for them to get necessary security measures in place, whether it is radio frequency ID, RFID, whether it's geofencing. I saw some technology that you could actually create pastors without using physical barriers to create the boundaries to the pastors. How do we create fodder banks and all of those other things to deal with how we feed them? Because I think one of the greatest disadvantage or hindrance to persons is the cost of feed. If they're able to feed them by getting sufficient land so they could grow the necessary items to prepare the silage or whatever it is, then they'll be able to be more profitable. And when you look at it, I think the last time I had a conversation with Crawford about it, who is also a goat farmer. He was saying that somebody with 10 goats could make about 600 grand per year. So if you have 100, you could make 6 million roughly. Yours is different because you deal with genetics and you sell at a much higher cost. But how do we actually make these things available to persons and so they know the different areas that they can benefit from? And also that goat meat is not the only thing, but other persons are going into goat milk, cheese, other byproducts. So we plan to support the industry in a real way by making the lands available to them so they can do the necessary housing of the animals and to actually grow the feed that they need, the material for the feed that they need, and to protect their investment with the necessary help in warding off the prairie elasticity.
From Northwest Manchester. My question is you hear me? As a small business owner, I felt so overlooked and unsupported. What real plans do you have to make it easier for people like me to grow and stay afloat?
I neglected to mention this in my presentation, but we, for the small business sector, we plan to implement 3-year tax relief for new companies that are established, so they won't have to pay corporate income tax for the first 3 years. The reason we're doing that is it's important for small businesses to formalize. The reason that is important is if you remain informal, it limits your access to capital to grow. So if you're formal and you need to grow beyond partner, family, etc., you will have a better opportunity. But while recognizing that we don't want to burden those companies with having to pay corporate income tax, we made a recommendation which the government has now adopted, which is for funding from the DBJ, which before this you would have to pay up to 10% of what you're borrowing in upfront fees. We lobbied and pressured the government to reverse that so that those fees are now incorporated into the loanable amount and you pay that back over a period of time. Because there's no point if you want to borrow $10 million, you have to find 1 million. If you can find 1 million up front, you don't really need to borrow 10 million. So we are going to implement those changes to facilitate and make it easier for businesses like yourself to access capital.
I'm Clement Pinnock, Porous. I have access to St. Tony's and Harmonies. My question is not so much a question, it's a comment. Dr. Campbell alluded to this earlier.
the restoration of bauxite, minor bauxite lands in Jamaica. I would love for the next PNP administration to emphasize and to make it as a policy to see that these minor bauxite lands are restored early after mining is done, so that lands can be made more available to the farmers of this country. And because that is one of the problems, not having access to land. And it's, apart from such a disgraceful look, and it is dangerous as well. So these minor holes, and they are there for years. I would love to see the next administration, which will be formed by the People's National Party, to see to it that these lands are reclaimed and made available to the farmers of Jamaica. Thank you very much.
Yes, good night everyone. I am Selwyn White. I'm a utility worker who work in St. Elizabeth, but I am from Rayafla. And my issue is with the roadway, because I have to travel all the way from Manchester to St. Elizabeth and Saturday. And the road between New Greenville roundabout to Square Chief is very bad. And from Black River to Black River, whenever rainfall is a great delay for us to get to work. I want to know what will be done for the road to get to work. Please, to be there.
Well, the man that just handed me the mic has to tell how much money I have to spend first. You know, the challenge that we have is that this current administration concentrates on the Prime Minister trying to build his own legacy in building just highways and forgetting what I would refer to as the interland. Right? So the issue, the particular issue that we have now with that stretch of roadway, especially from Greenville roundabout, so let us say to gutters, that should have been done in a program that was set out by then Prime Minister Portia Simpson Miller, which would then have gone from Spur Tree into southern Manchester, total rehabilitation from Greenville to Spur Tree and then down into southern Manchester. Once the 2016 election came, all of that program was shelved by this administration. Now, the piece from Spur Tree back to Greenville should have been a part of the Spark program, but that cannot be done until the repiping is done, which is supposed to form part of the Greater Mandeville Water Supply Program, which should have started 2 years ago and has not yet. So when I hear the Prime Minister announcing that 25,000 more people in Mandeville getting water, but there's no water to get because there is no completion of the same program that he's announcing. So we have found him going around the island cutting ribbons for unfinished projects.
Yes.
And that has been his hallmark. And he did it with the Southern Coastal Highway because up to now, the piece from Harbourview to Yallas has not yet been handed over to the National Works Agency, but yet still he had cut the ribbon about a year and a half ago, announcing.
before the local government election.
Minister of Water.
What I can guarantee to you is, as I said in my presentation, is that we will be looking at a road maintenance fund. I don't see this current administration fixing that section up, because already the Prime Minister is speaking about the next leg of the Highway 2000, which is supposed to go to Black River. I mean, just last week I heard that there's a shift in where it is supposed to go. It's supposed to pass from Williamsfield through Mile Gully, then I hear it is supposed to go southern through Clarendon, South Manchester, southern St. Elizabeth to Black River. Now I'm hearing another from Spurtree down. So we're uncertain. But what we want to do is working, as I said, with the municipal corporation in finding the best financial source to be able to maintain our roadways. Because as we are doing now, 90% of our roads need proper rehabilitation. The National Works Agency would need about $1 trillion to do such rehabilitation. Central government will not be able to find that money. So we have to find a way in how it is, as we propose, into a road maintenance fund. But at the meantime, the more than $5 billion that is spent now is too inadequate. So we'll have to find a way in how it is that we finance it. But we can't continue doing it the way we are doing it now and expect persons to be happy with the results that we are getting.
My name is Denton Atkins, a former public sector worker. So I'm at the Wicket now as a private sector worker, still battling for the public sector, because I believe that they were treated quite unfairly at the negotiation table when it comes to their salaries. But yet we agree that crime and violence is a problem, but then police have a problem at the table. Then we agree that literacy is not where it ought to be, but teachers have a problem at the table. Then we under-equip the hospitals, and then we don't agree that nurses and doctors are to go up some more on the table. What different will our Prime Minister to be and Finance Minister to be do at the negotiation table with regards to these set of workers?
I'll let Julian take it, but I just want to say one thing. We went through a major public sector compensation restructuring exercise. And we had said from the get-go that the guiding principle of equity was important to ensure that people felt justified at the end of it. And we don't think that was maintained. And so you have a large swathe of public sector workers, especially people like the teachers who are in the classrooms, who feel that they were not properly looked after. But the overall public sector wage bill has gone up dramatically as a result of that exercise. And therefore, it's going to mean that we really need to get the economy moving so that we can grow the pie and afford to make some of the adjustments that have to be made. But where we're inheriting a structure in the public sector wage bill, which has been created by this government, which is really not dealing with many of the public sector workers in a way that they feel comfortable. So we're going to have to look at creative ways that we can address those issues, especially for those professions where we need to retain people and there are many people leaving the profession and migrating and so on. So I'm talking about the teachers and the nurses, police officers and so on. And we have a strategy for retention where we're looking at things like student loan forgiveness. We're looking at things like prioritizing access to housing for them and things like setting up the staff room facilities so they're more comfortable in the workplace, the tax coming off for the tablets and so on and the laptops, a raft of things that we have looked at to try and make their life better until we are able to readjust again and recalibrate that wage, the way in which the wage profile works, so that those who didn't really weren't properly looked after are looked after. We have a situation, as you know, where the political class got a massive increase, but the classroom teachers, many of them, were around 20% over 3 years, at a time when inflation was high. So it really has not been fair. It was not done in the way it should have been done. Created a lot of bitterness and anxiety. So we're going to have to take our time and work our way out of that. Julian.
All right. Night has been fine spent.
Good night. My name is Tony Lee, and I have this kind of 2 questions, one for Dr. Cameron and one for Julian. I'll just ask them so they can answer after I finish. First of all, I heard everything you spoke about in relation to agriculture. And I want to carry out some individuals who do crops because of the piece of land that they are, whether that is lease or borrowed. So they are unable to make the planning in terms of the long-term crops that can probably get them more. So I don't know if you have your plan with income faster and help them. The other thing is this: we have a serious issue in relation to seeds. And I would like to know if you have any plans on establishing a seed bank that is only going to handle native seeds that can be replanted and not the ones that come from overseas that you have to keep buying, and all it does is destroy the land because you have to use a lot of chemicals to keep them looking good. That is yours. Now, Julia, this one is, we are looking, I don't know if anybody has looked at this untapped source of revenue for the country and for individuals as well. When I was in the workforce, we had proposed to the then government at the time a plan to increase national income, national insurance. At the time, I think we could have increased it by at least 100% for PAYE individuals, and it would not have impacted the salaries as much. But the situation we have is that there are a number of people out here working who have no idea that they can pay into the national insurance. And I'm speaking of people who are just doing maybe weeding, you see them with them chainsaw and walk on the road. And I don't know if you have a plan to capture all these people, because it is an untapped source that can help the government. And just to let them know that even if you pay more, at the end of the day, that means you'll be getting back more from the lands.
Well, in relation to your first question, getting land into the hands of the farmers is one of the things that I spoke to. Because most small farmers in Jamaica currently, or most farmers in Jamaica currently are considered small farmers. 80% of them are less than 5 acres. And most of the times, it's even less than 2. So the first thing is to, as I said, do the inventory, identify the arable lands, and then make it available to them at the appropriate rate. And some mechanism put in place if somebody has the lease and they're not putting the land on the production after a certain period of time, you can take it back from that individual and give it to somebody who is serious about farming. 2, adapting to newer technology, right? So if you only have a small piece of land and you don't want to move anywhere, maybe you have to entertain using a greenhouse or using hydroponics or something, so you can increase your production and your productivity, right? Because you do have technology affords you to be able to do these things in smaller spaces and still be productive. In terms of the seed bank, it's an absolute priority. We have to use the tertiary institutions, KSD University, and also the different research stations. So research and development is going to be a critical part of what we do. And I think COVID taught us that we need to be able to produce our own planting material, because in the instance where there is a problem elsewhere, we're not going to be able to feed ourselves. So to be able to develop a seed bank and develop our own planting material is an absolute priority that we're working on.
on the issue of the NIS, I think we'd have to engage in some public education to encourage persons who are self-employed, not formally in a salary type situation, and to show them what the benefit is of starting to make those contributions so that they can benefit from a pension when they get to the retirement age. So you are in fact very correct, and that's something that we would definitely take on.
Hi, good evening everyone. I'm Dane Thomas, pharmacist, Gateway Pharmacy, business owner. And my question is primarily about healthcare. And you know, they say that your health is the greatest wealth, right? No, my concern is this, that we have noticed recently that there is a drug shortage in the pharmacies, especially for those persons who are on drug for the elderly, that's the guided program. And there is a major drug shortage in that regard. Additionally, I'm also looking at the National Health Fund and how the coverage of the National Health Fund is, because drugs are very expensive, and the Health Fund is providing coverage for those medications. However, is there any plans to expand the coverage of the National Health Fund in terms of the amount of money that it covers for each medication? Because we find that a lot of persons, when they come to the pharmacies, they do have difficulties. Sometimes they find difficulties in paying for their medications. And my biggest concern is that not only do patients come and buy medications, part of it, but they don't come back and get the rest. Now, if someone is not taking their medication correctly, or taking the medication until it is finished, then it wouldn't make any sense to start taking the medication in the first place, because they will not be getting it better. So my question is, in terms of the Drug for the Elderly program, is there any plans to revamp that program? I know that the present government is looking at a revamping of it, whereby they're asking us, the pharmacy owners, to pay for the medications, which normally it's normally provided by the government to us, because the Janet program is a program that whereby the pharmacies basically provide that service to those who are over 65. No, they're now asking us, based on what they're asking us to do, is to buy the medications and then give it back to the patient for $40, and then they will pay us back based on the amount of medication that we sell. Now, I don't know if that is really viable, and if you guys are aware of this, and if there are any plans to change this. Also, as I asked once, I'm sorry about that. Another thing I want to ask is, look at, are there any studies, were there any studies done to show that the viability of free healthcare in Jamaica, and is free healthcare making our population more healthy? Is it helping in any way at all? And that's a concern of mine, because even though we have free healthcare, there are so many sick persons out there that do not have access to medications. And so I'm not sure how helpful it is, and is there a need to provide more social work in our healthcare, because I think that is grossly short, and so we need to look at that some more. I have more questions, but I'll leave it right there.
The spokesperson for health is not here, but I substitute. I think when you're approaching these problems, you have to look at how you deal with the immediate problem, but you have to look at more medium and long-term solution as well. So the immediate problem is obviously you're trying to see how many illnesses you can get coverage for and how you can expand the coverage. But no country is going to be able to sustain that if you're not decreasing the incidence of the different illnesses. So a part of what the leader said in his presentation at the outset is that we have to look at screening, proper national screening program, so you can detect these things earlier and you can intervene. Because what it takes to treat someone who is, say, pre-diabetic and to prevent them, as opposed to somebody who has diabetes and is now suffering from the different sequelae, whether it's a heart attack, a stroke, or whatever it is. So the plan has to be how we increase the screening and focus on primary level healthcare. How do we get back community health aides into the community? How do we get medical practitioners into the health centers in the different communities? One of the proposals is to cause those who want to specialize to have to do a year out in rural Jamaica, so that your health centers is always staffed and persons that don't have an accident or an emergency don't need to go to the hospital, but they can actually seek care within their community. So I think that's a priority of the next PNP administration. In relation to free healthcare, it is probably a Pyrrhic victory because most of the times the service is said to be free, but it's not available. If you have a fracture, you're going to have to purchase the implants. If you need a CT scan, most of the times, you're going to have to pay elsewhere and go, and most of the times not even an ambulance is available. So I think that in its current form, it's not working, because even if you wanted to keep it in its current form, you could do a simple thing as collecting the portion from the health insurance. Just put a mechanism in place so that when somebody turns up at the hospital, you could collect from the health insurance. So they still don't pay, the individuals didn't pay anything more out of pocket. But you collect for the visit, you collect for the diagnostics, you collect for the pharmaceuticals, and you'd obviously have that money now to be able to contribute to the running of the facility. So I think it does require a study that is more meaningful as we seek to intervene, so that we have a proper health care that does not prevent anybody at the point of access and that guarantees an acceptable minimum standard of care.
I just wanted to add two things. Thank God we have a National Health Fund and a JADET program. Can you imagine if we didn't have it? And it's the People's National Party that brought those benefits to the people of Jamaica. And the other point I wish to make is that if we don't do a shift towards screening and catching these chronic conditions early, so we can minimize the way in which they play out and the harm they do to patients, the National Health Fund and JADET is going to be increasingly overburdened by the needs of patients who have chronic conditions that are well advanced, and it will be very difficult for any government to finance the care at that stage. So it's really important that we have the right mix of health policies so we can so that the resources we have can actually address the needs of the patients. And right now it's trending in the wrong direction.
Good night, my name is Adria Skeffrey, and my question is for the leader of the opposition. You stated that 30% of primary school children are graduating from primary school and they're not able to read. And you stated that absenteeism is one of the reasons for that, and you gave two policy options to solve the problem. What about the students that don't have an absenteeism problem, meaning that they go to school every day and they still can't read? So what are the other policy options do you have to solve the problem of illiteracy amongst primary school children?
Thank you. It is true that absenteeism is only one of the problems that are contributing to it. It is an important one, and it's one where public policy can make a big difference. But there are other situations as well. And for example, the system where we push children up from grade to grade to grade, where they're not yet at the level of being able to handle the higher grades, you're just reinforcing a permanent problem that is not being addressed. And we have to look up whether that really makes sense, or instead we put into effect remedial programs where as soon as the problem is detected, and make sure that they're at the level they need to be before they move up. I'm not the spokesperson for education, and Dr. Damian Crawford, I call him Doctor, but Damian Crawford, Senator Crawford, is the person who normally would speak on some of the details of this. But suffice it to say that we are seeing where remedial programs can make a big difference if they're well designed and if they're put the necessary support behind them. We have one running, for example, at Holy Trinity now that has been designed by top educators. Grace Maston, who is the former principal of Campion, and before that Alpha. Ronnie Thwaites is part of it too, a former Minister of Health, Education, and another renowned educator who also worked in the United States, a Jamaican lady. And they are really looking at bringing literacy skills and numeracy skills to students that have left primary school and entered first form and are really not at that level. And essentially what they're doing is immersing those students in a much more intensive program of those type of skills. What our system now seems to assume that you can teach a broad cross-section of disciplines. And even though the children are not grasping the key fundamental ones, you can just proceed as if that's sufficient. And it isn't. So we need to actually bring those programs much earlier in the school system rather than waiting until they're now in secondary school and you're dealing with it. We need to deal with it as soon as it starts to manifest and ensure that the time is being spent on the basics when the basics ought to be learned. I can tell you that I went to a school called Mona Prep, and when I was at that school, we spent virtually all our time doing reading, writing, and arithmetic. I mean, we spent a lot to make sure that we had those basics intact. And I believe that was a valuable system. Certainly served me well. So I do think we've kind of strayed a bit too far into other areas which are less central to making somebody ready to receive education at a different level and haven't got the basics correct. We need to go back to basics. Thank you for your question.
Good night, everyone. My name is Richard Gosbert, caretaker for the Craighead Division, and I'm also a farmer. A suggestion: is it possible small room in that farmer also, and is it possible we could have a registry for those pre-deltees? So with AI, even if you walk past my place, I would know that listen, my place is being circulated by yes, right? And I don't know if I missed it, but I'm also a beekeeper. What is in the pipeline for beekeepers? Thank you.
Radio licensing registry, not just for sex offenders registry. And they go into AI and then it sends out a trigger if they come near your place. Wow, sound good?
As I said, we're looking at how we can increase security to our farmers by helping them with some of the things that they need, and by allowing the legislation to also assist them. And in relation to the bee farmers, that's an area that we're also doing some research on. In a presentation like this, you can't cover all the areas because it's limited time. But the apiculture is obviously something that has room for growth, and it is something that will also receive an allocation and an attention so that more persons can be introduced to it, and that people can be more efficient at carrying it out as well.
Final question.
Hi, good night. My name is Alexandra Lavanda, and I have a second. My question is, what initiatives and support systems are being implemented by the government to engage and empower disengaged youths who have participated in voluntary service and to provide stability and resources for young persons interested in pursuing careers in political leadership or leadership overall?
Unattached youths. Well, our approach to dealing with Jamaica's crime monster is to have a balanced approach. And we feel this government has departed from that. And it has created a lot of problems. And we had basically 78 years of much elevated murder rate because of the poor policies of this government, where they were insisting on trying to use states of emergency, which were not designed as a way of reducing crime through holding criminals accountable by proper investigation and prosecution, but really is a mechanism to defend the state from being subverted in an emergency, and they were trying to deploy it as a kind of wide-scale curfew. It did not work, and it was in fact been ruled to be unconstitutional. Before we left office, we had Unite for Change, which was a program designed to deal with young people in particular who needed some support, needed mentorship, needed training, needed to be financial literacy and readiness for work training. And that is where we think we need to go back. And it wasn't just the government that was doing this, because we partnered with the churches and other non-governmental organizations to roll out a program, which was a holistic program for getting youth off of the pathway towards violent crime and destruction to a pathway towards productive citizenship. And we had the CSJP, which was a financing facility to back that up, which no longer exists. We need to get back to a balanced approach to law enforcement. We give the police tools they need to do their job, the legislation they need, and the assets that they need, physical assets, and the number of police that need to be employed. But we also deal with the issues on the ground as to why our young people are heading along the wrong path and giving them a better opportunity in life. And right now the private sector, the government has effectively outsourced this to the private sector through a program called Project STAR. But it's very limited in its scope because it's funded by the private sector. It's only in a handful of communities, whereas this really needs to be a national program. And so this is something that we are going to pursue when we form government, because we see the need to really go back in the direction of a holistic, balanced approach towards dealing with Jamaica's problem of violent crime, not just through the symptoms, but the causes as well.
All right, what a time, what a time. We have a strategy for the retention of teachers as an educator. That struck a note with me, party leader, and I thank you for having our teachers in mind. Your voices were heard loud and clear. Thank you for your participation, your recommendations, and your questions. I'm going to quickly highlight a few familiar faces. Is that Mrs. Heather Murray, former principal of Hampton High School, with us? Nice to see you, Mrs. Murray. I see Dane Thomas, Gateway Pharmacy. Mr. Reed, I see you, Young Women and Men of Purpose. Miss Millicent Price, Patricia Elliott, Miss Fraser. I see you. That's the Women's Movement of the People's National Party. Mr. Golding, Party Leader, still want to do your closing remarks? 2 minutes.
Tomorrow's Labor Day, so we're all going to be very busy tomorrow, right? So all I'm going to say is thank you everybody for coming. Thank you for your participation, in particular in the question and answer section, and your suggestions as well. It's been very useful for us, very interesting, and I hope you found it worthwhile. And we look forward to doing more of these as time goes by. God bless.
All right, so I'll hand over now for a quick vote of thanks from MP in waiting, Mr. Valentin Wind.
All right. I know we've been here for a very long time, but you know, it's good to see the entire Manchester coming out. You know, the South is here, certainly Central is here, and Northwest is here. And last but by no means the least, Northeast Manchester is here. So, man, Good. You know, I just want to say thanks to all the speakers who presented here tonight. The most esteemed speakers, I must say. And last but by no means the least, when I lift my hat up to say thanks, our moderator, great moderator, to the hotel, Gulfview Hotel, we want to say thanks for providing us with this lovely accommodation. Yes, I hear them here. To the police who gave us good security. Thank you. Media personnel. And certainly all of you who came out and participated this evening. I learned so much, and I must say that we are looking forward to Northeast Manchester benefiting from that 500 houses, 100 every year. And certainly, we're looking forward to the farm road and the restoration of our storage, because we really need to ensure that our farmers have a reasonable price for their crops. So we're looking forward to that. But I'm sure the young business people here from all across the parish, they're looking forward to that moratorium of 3 years moratorium now, when you borrow to start your business. It was indeed a great evening. We are looking forward to many more like this. And the next time I attend one, I want to invite you all yes, of course, the next time I attend one is a member of parliament. But we're looking forward to having one of those in Northeast Manchester. And that one might be focused on agriculture. So Coordinator Campbell, our Jensen, we're looking forward to inviting you to a forum to deal with agriculture there. Once again, thank you all for coming. It was indeed a great evening. One love.
Thank you, Mr. Wade. So together we have the power to shape a brighter, more inclusive future for every Jamaican. So ladies and gentlemen, please ensure that you get involved. Now let us stand for the National Pledge of Jamaica. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and good night to all of you. Just a reminder, Bellefield Divisional Conference is June 1st at Bellefield High School. And 8th of June for Alligator Pond Divisional Conference. And Christiana is this Sunday at Christiana High School. So, and Walterstown, the 29th at Cobbler. So go out and support our divisional conferences.
Almost can't get some publicity. Everything.
Get everybody together, so John.